That sounds dramatic, I know, but it is the truth. Somewhere between the battlefield and the hospital bed, between the classified forms and the medication they told me was for neural trauma recovery, the person I used to be simply disappeared. They gave me a new one. Marcus Hale. Colony Maintenance Technician, Grade 3. Serial number. Housing unit. Work schedule. I accepted it the way a man accepts a coat that does not quite fit. It covers you. It keeps the cold out. You stop thinking about the coat you lost. Callaway Station was the kind of place the galaxy forgot on purpose. A smear of prefabricated metal and recycled air on the edge of explored space. Home to about 4,000 people who all had one thing in common. They were done with, wherever they came from. Nobody asked questions here. Nobody cared where you had been, or what you had done, or why you flinched sometimes when the loading bays made a sound like distant artillery. You did your work, you ate your meals, you slept, you repeated it all again. I was good with engines. That was the one thing that followed me through the memory suppression intact. Whatever they had done to my mind, my hands still knew how to fix things. There is something honest about a machine. It does not lie about what is wrong with it. It breaks in specific, diagnosable ways, and if you pay attention long enough, it tells you exactly where the damage is. I had been at Callaway for 6 years when the Vihari ship arrived. I was under a crawler unit in Bay 7 when the proximity alert went off, that low whooping sound that meant something large was requesting clearance. I slid out from under the machine, wiped my hands on the rag I kept tucked in my belt, and walked to the bay doors the way everyone else did. Not running, trying not to look too interested, failing completely. The ship was unlike anything I had seen in my recent memory. The Vihari built their vessels the way nature builds bones. Curved, functional, nothing wasted, nothing added for appearance. It was enormous and quiet, in a way that large things rarely are. It settled onto the landing platform with a patience that felt almost deliberate, as if it wanted the watching humans to have time to prepare themselves. I stood at the bay doors with a wrench still in my hand. The colony's diplomatic liaison was already down there in his best jacket, looking like a man who had rehearsed a speech 3 times and forgotten it completely. There were others, station security, a few off-duty workers, children pressing against the safety barriers. The whole colony had stopped breathing, more or less. The ramp extended, long, silver, catching the light, and then a child came down it. She was small, maybe 9 years old, though it was hard to tell with a child like her, because there was nothing uncertain about the way she moved. She was half human in ways I could see from 40 meters away, and could not explain. Something in the proportion of her shoulders, the angle of her jaw, the particular way she tilted her head as she looked around at us. The rest of her was Vihari, bioluminescent traces running along her temples like rivers of dim gold light, fingers that were 3 rather than 5, longer than a human child's, and precise. Eyes that were larger, darker, catching light the way deep water does. She walked through the crowd with complete confidence. The crowd parted the way crowds do when something passes through them that doesn't belong to them, that cannot be contained by them. She moved without hesitation, without looking at the faces around her, as if she had already known exactly where she was going before she ever set foot on this station. She stopped in front of me. I had not moved. I was still holding the wrench. I was still wearing my work clothes, still covered in the grease and grime of an ordinary morning's work, still being, as precisely as I could manage, nobody important. She looked up at me. Her dark eyes were steady. She said, in accented but completely clear standard, "Father." Not a question. The wrench hit the ground. I heard it distantly, the way you hear things when your entire world has just tilted on an axis you didn't know existed. The crowd around us had gone silent. I mean truly silent. No shuffling, no murmuring, not a single person speaking. Just the sound of the station's ventilation system and a child's calm, certain voice still resting in the air between us. I could not speak. I did not know what to say. I did not know who she was. I did not know why every single cell in my body was responding to that one word, like a key turning in a lock I had forgotten was there. Then her mother came down the ramp. Velkara stood 7 feet tall. Her skin carried the full bioluminescent pattern of an adult Vihari in formal display. Soft pulses of blue-white light moving along her arms and throat and collarbone in slow, rhythmic waves. She was wearing the equivalent of Vihari ceremonial clothing, structured and dark, with no decoration except for one small carved piece hanging at her throat. She moved with the deliberate care of someone who had been waiting a very long time to do this specific thing, and did not want to do it wrong. She stopped a few feet from me. She did not say Marcus. She said something else. 4 syllables. A sound that lived in a frequency slightly lower than normal speech. A sound that I had heard before in dreams I could not hold on to when I woke. My chest did something I did not have a word for. Not pain. Not quite. The closest word I have is recognition, but that word is too small for what happened in that moment. Her translator, a small device worn at her wrist, spoke a second later in flat standard. I found you, it said. It took 11 years, but I found you. We sat for a long time that first evening in the station's small diplomatic receiving room, which had never actually been used for diplomacy, and still smelled faintly of the storage crates that had been hastily moved out to make space. Velkara told her story through the translator in careful, measured sentences, and I listened the way you listen when you understand that everything is about to change. The Battle of the Kavath Corridor. I knew that name only as a phrase in a file I had been told existed, but was never allowed to see. Classified. Final engagement of the war between Humanity's United Earth Authority and the Vihari Collective. Outcome. Ceasefire. Casualties on both sides. Significant. Details. Sealed pending diplomatic resolution. Velkara knew it differently. She had been a courier, not a soldier, carrying biological data between 2 Vihari command positions when the human forces swept through the corridor and everything broke apart. She had been shot. Not fatally, but badly enough. She had gone down in the wreckage of a communications relay station, and she had lain there, in enemy territory, waiting for either rescue or death. What found her was neither. What found her was a man in a damaged human combat suit, who had clearly been separated from his unit, and was equally clearly far too stubborn to act sensibly about it. He had come through the relay station, seen her, and stopped. And then, against every reasonable calculation available to him, he had picked her up and carried her. 11 kilometers, through contested territory, with 2 cracked ribs that he had apparently not thought worth mentioning to anyone. The Vihari have a biological mechanism that humans had not fully understood at the time of the war. During a significant trauma, particularly a life-threatening event, their bodies record something. Not just memory, genetics. A biological imprint of whoever is nearest during the act of survival. It is an evolutionary feature from an older time, when Vihari young needed to identify allies in environments where sight was unreliable. The imprint is passed to offspring, not as memory, as recognition, as the knowledge in the body that precedes the knowledge in the mind. Velkara had not known she was pregnant at the Kavath corridor. Sova had been born knowing his face. I sat with Sova while Velkara slept. Velkara had not slept well, she told me quietly, in 11 years. I believed her. She had the particular exhaustion of someone who had been holding themselves together through sheer determination for longer than was reasonable, and now that the reason for holding on had been found, her body was finally presenting its invoice. Sova was not tired at all. She sat across from me on one of the receiving room's uncomfortable chairs with her legs folded beneath her, and asked me questions with no introduction, and no apparent awareness that any of them might be uncomfortable. What do humans eat when they're sad? I thought about it seriously. Depends on the human, I said. Usually something warm. She accepted this. We eat something cold, she said. Very cold. Sweet. It is hard to feel sad when your mouth is very cold. She paused. Humans only have 2 eyes. Yes. That seems like not enough. We manage. How? Mostly by turning our heads a lot. She thought about this with genuine concentration, and then decided it was probably fine. She reached into the small bag she carried and produced a carved object and set it on the table between us without ceremony. It was a hand, a human hand, 5 fingers, rendered in some pale Vihari stone, slightly larger than a real hand, perfectly detailed. She had clearly spent a long time on it. The wear on the stone suggested she had carried it for years. We carve things to mark concepts that matter, she said. In Vihari culture, a hand reaching outward means a person who could run but stayed. She looked at it. I learned that from my mother. She told me about the human who stayed. I did not trust my voice enough to speak immediately. I sat with what she had given me, the way you sit with something that is both gift and wound at once. Then I said, "How long have you had this?" "Since I was 4, Sova said. "I carved it myself. My grandmother helped with the fingers. I kept getting the fingers wrong." The next morning, a UEA enforcement shuttle landed on Platform 2. Commander Reyes was a trim, careful man who wore his authority the way some people wear expensive clothing, visibly, deliberately, as a message. He had 2 officers with him, and a diplomatic clearance code that got him through the station's outer security without anyone being able to stop him, and he arrived at the door of the diplomatic receiving room with the calm face of a man who had done difficult things before and expected to do them again. He was polite. That was the thing that would stay with me. He was genuinely, carefully polite. He explained that the narrator, he called me by the number that had replaced my name, was required for security debriefing in relation to classified events from the Kaveth engagement. He explained that Velkara and her daughter would be respectfully escorted back to their vessel and provided full diplomatic honors on their return to Vahari space. He explained that this was not personal, and that the UEA valued its relationship with the Vahari collective enormously, and that he hoped we could all handle this in a dignified and efficient way. He explained, in other words, that he was going to erase me again, and send Sova away, and bury Kaveth one more time under a layer of paperwork so thick, nobody would ever find the truth underneath it. I listened to all of this. Then I said, no. Reyes looked at me the way people look at something they expected to be simple, and have discovered is not. Technician Hale. That's not my name, I said. I didn't say it loudly. I said it the way you state a fact. I don't know exactly what my name is yet. But I know it isn't what you gave me. I know I carried someone through 11 kilometers of contested ground during a battle your government has spent a decade pretending happened differently than it did. I know that action had consequences that are standing right there. I looked at Sova, who was looking back at me with complete calm. I didn't know what I was doing or why when I did it. I just knew I wasn't going to leave someone in the wreckage if there was anything left in me that could move. You don't get to erase that. You already tried once. Reyes began to speak again about clearance levels and diplomatic sensitivity. He was interrupted. Velkara's brother Tarnek, who had been silent throughout the entire visit, who had looked at every human on this station with the composed and thorough distrust of someone who had very good reasons for it, stepped forward. He spoke in Vahari. Velkara translated quietly, without being asked, because she wanted me to hear it directly rather than through the wrist device. He said, "Your government fears what this man is evidence of. We have studied humanity for 30 years, and we have reached one conclusion. The people you attempt to erase are always the ones who did something you were not capable of doing yourself." He stood beside me, and then, without discussion, without anyone organizing it, the people of Callaway Station began to gather in the corridor outside the receiving room door. Not armed, not threatening, just present. Dock workers and kitchen staff and off-duty technicians, and a woman who ran the station's small clinic, and old Paris from Bay 4, who was 73 years old, and moved slowly, but moved nonetheless. 4,000 people, who had all chosen a place the galaxy forgot on purpose. They had not forgotten. Reyes looked at the gathering crowd. He looked at Tarnek. He looked at Sova, who was watching him with the patient attention of a child, who has already decided how she feels about a situation, and is simply waiting for the adults to catch up. He left. He did not say he would not come back. He did not make promises. He simply made the calculation that a man in his position always makes, what he wanted to do, and what the cost of doing it would be, and he left. That night, Velkara told me what my name meant. The phrase translated imperfectly but honestly as, the one who stayed. She had said it every night since Kaveth, she told me. Not as a prayer, exactly, more as a reminder. That it had happened, that it was real, that somewhere in the galaxy, the sound existed even if the source of it was lost. Echoes, she said, only exist because something real made a sound. I am sitting now in Bay 7, with the lights low, and Sova asleep in the corner chair she dragged from the receiving room, because she said the chairs in there were more comfortable, and she was right. She has grease on her hands. She spent 3 hours helping me with the crawler unit this afternoon, asking questions the entire time, taking nothing on faith, testing every answer I gave her against what she could observe directly. She was wrong about the fuel intake calibration twice, and right about it once. And when she was right, she did not gloat. She simply adjusted her model and moved forward. I do not know if I was a good man before they took my name away. I do not know if what I did at Cavith was brave, or desperate, or simply the only thing my body knew how to do in that moment. I cannot remember the weight of her, or the 11 kilometers, or the sound my ribs made. I cannot remember the choice. But it made a sound. And the sound is asleep in my chair with grease on her hands. And tomorrow she is going to tell me everything that is wrong with my calibration technique, and I am going to listen. Because she is usually right, and because she is mine, and I am hers. And that is the only name I need right now.